Hey guys, Chapter 5, The Unicorn and the Barn. The next morning, I stopped by my treehouse on the way to the clinic. I used a couple of thumbtacks to fasten a no trespassing sign to the trunk. Now that I knew why Allegra had posted the property, I figured it couldn't hurt to have one on my tree. It was a good spot and easy to see on that side of the ridge. I didn't think she would notice that I used one from another, less visible tree. As usual for Sundays, Dad and Steve were sleeping in. I was used to getting up by myself to go to church with Grandma until she went into the nursing home. They probably wouldn't think anything about my being gone. I checked the barn first, but the doors were locked and the paddock was empty. I went around to the front door and knocked. Nothing. I couldn't see through the curtains, but it didn't look like any lights were on. I went into the front yard, checking out the windows, but couldn't see anything there either. Maybe they were having breakfast in the kitchen. A huge new washer and dryer sat right next to the door on the screened-in back porch. A little frilly curtain covered the kitchen door window. I knocked and waited. The curtain moved aside, and I saw a gray-haired lady holding a big knife. I jumped back. Who was that? She smiled and disappeared for a moment, then opened the door. You must be Eric. Come in. She waved the knife around, but not in my general direction, so I did what she said. The kitchen was changed too. Everything was new, white cabinets and lots more lights. Instead of the red trimmed metal table and chairs, there was a kitchen island in the middle of the room, covered with a big pile of chopped meat and a bunch of dishes filled with mushy brown stuff. There were stacks of dishes and bowls around the sink and big plastic bins soaking in dark blue water. Chris told me about you. I'm Georgia McIntyre, but you can call me Georgie. Everybody does. She pointed to herself with the knife. I'm the office manager and vet tech. Pardon me if I don't shake hands, but I'm in the midst of fixing the meals here. Hygiene, you know. Her other hand waved a dish rag towards the pile of meat. Maybe she was making a stew, but that brown mush, it didn't look too good. Yes, ma'am, I said, just to be on the safe side. She scooped the chopped meat into a plastic bowl and stuck it in the fridge. I'll just finish up these before I show you where the mop is, unless you'd rather learn the kitchen protocol first. Mop? Kitchen protocol? I thought. Oh man, working here was just going to be as bad as working in the barn. I didn't cook too much at home, just sandwiches mostly, although Steve was getting to be a pretty good cook now that he worked at the diner. How hard could it be to fix feed for the animals? The lady put lids on a few more things and put them away. It shouldn't take you long. We don't have many boarders this weekend, so the floor isn't too bad. Georgie said, pulling out a broom out of the pantry closet. She handed it to me along with the dustpan, sweeping the waiting room first, then the rest of the downstairs rooms. Don't worry about the surgery room for now. Chris and Allegra should be back from Mass shortly. She made little shooing motions with her hands, so I went down the hall into what used to be my grandma's living room and swept the floor. That was easy enough except for a few bits of fur that kept floating off the dustpan when I tried to empty it. The dining room was an office now, with 2 desks and a bunch of file cabinets where the China huts used to sit. The spare bedroom where I used to stay had been made into 2 small rooms, each with a steel table in the middle and a couple of cafeteria-type chairs. I kind of missed the little brass bed I slept in. I should have asked to keep it when they cleared out the house, but then I would have had to give up the bed that my mom had picked out. I opened the door to the room that used to be Grandma's bedroom. It had shelves full of cages and aquariums with screen tops. It smelled like wet dog and something strong and a sharp sharp and damp. A couple of the aquariums had a layer of wood shavings and a card clipped to the side. In one, a white rat was curled up in the corner. There was a sorry-looking mutt with his hind legs in a cast sleeping on his side in a cage on the bottom shelf. I just finished sweeping when Allegra came in, pushing one of those big yellow buckets on wheels like school janitors use. "Here," she whispered, motioning me over. She lifted the mop and dropped the head into the wringer attached to the bucket. She squeezed out the water, careful not to get any on her dress, and shoved the mop handle toward me. "Try not to make so much noise," she said, still whispering. "Why not?" I asked in my normal voice. "You'll stress the patients," she answered, gesturing towards the cages. "Strange voices can frighten them. They all must be scared when they hear you," I whispered. The mutt lifted his head and whimpered a bit. Allegra cut her eyes at me and went over to his cage, making cooing sounds. He thumped his tail. While I mopped, she took the water bowls and dishes out of the mutt's cage and the aquariums. She set them on a tray by the table by the window. "Bring those into the kitchen when you finish mopping," she whispered and left. Didn't even look back to see if I nodded in agreement or anything. When I finished, I picked up the tray. I noticed a big jar holding some scummy-looking water with bubbles along the side. It smelled bad, so I took that too. Back in the kitchen, Georgie was putting things away. "Those go on the left side of the sink," she said. "Dirty dishes on the left, clean and sterile dishes on the right. You can scrape the food into this trash can." I plunked down the tray and tossed bits of dried up fruit and brown mess into the trash. I picked up the jar to pour the nasty water down the sink. "Stop!" cried Georgie. I nearly dropped the jar. "Don't pour that out. That's a squonk." "A what?" "A squonk. It's a patient, not trash." Georgie took the jar away from me. Oh dear, it had been looking so promising too. "What's a squonk?" I asked. Squonks are very shy creatures, ashamed of their appearance. Imagine a cross between a duck-billed platypus and a toad, with slimy skin and lots of warts. They cry constantly because of their ugliness. When captured, they dissolve into tears to avoid being seen. She draped the dish towel across the countertop and gently set down the jar. The water was quivering in an odd fashion, with a swirl in the center like a blob of brownish jellyfish. Tiny bubbles rose to the surface and popped, releasing a rotten egg smell. "How do you know what it looks like?" I asked. Chris said this one is very bold, for it is kind. When we leave it alone long enough, it solidifies again. So I've caught a few glimpses. Sometimes it sings, so we know it's doing well. They usually don't range this far south. Squonks are a breed of fearsome critters that Paul Bunyan's lumberjacks discovered. Georgie leaned over the jar. There, pretty. It's just Eric." "Paul Bunyan," I said. "He's not real. He's just a character in stories." "So are unicorns. But that creature out in the barn is just as real as you, and so is this squonk." She picked up the jar, taking pains to carry it level so the water wouldn't slosh too much. When Allegra and Dr. Baronsky came in, "What's the skunk doing in here?" Allegra demanded. "Just a little misunderstanding," Georgie said. "Eric thought the jar needed cleaning. I'll put this back where it belongs." "Cleaning?" Allegra screeched. "Did he hurt it?" She whirled around to glare at me as Georgie slipped past her with the jar. "Mom, I told you this was a bad idea. He doesn't know anything. He's going to mess things up." How was I supposed to know that stinky water was a creature? I didn't. It doesn't look any different from the mop water. Nobody told me about it, and it was next to all those other dirty dishes. I wouldn't hurt anything on purpose. It wasn't fair. All I really wanted to do was hang out with Moon Pearl, and all I did was clean up stinky messes. Allegra, he couldn't have known. Allegra pouted her mouth, all scrunched up. The doctor sighed, then turned to me. We haven't had any new help in a long time. I'm afraid we're not doing a very good job of training you. I blinked at that. I wasn't used to grown-ups apologizing to me. It's okay, I said. Why don't you go out to the barn and muck out the stall? The unicorn is in the paddock. I'll be out in a bit and show you how to curry her and what to feed her, she said. I didn't need to be told twice, so I left. Mucking out the stall wasn't so bad this time. It didn't stink as much as that squonk. As I pushed the loaded wheelbarrow over to the compost pile, the unicorn came trotting over to me. Hey, Beauty. Hey, Moon Pearl, I said as she stopped a few feet away. I stretched out my hand and I waited. She stepped closer and nuzzled my finger with her nose. It was so soft, like skin of a ripe peach. Slowly, I turned my hand over and rubbed between her nostrils. The little whiskers on the end tickled. Hey, darling, you like me, don't you? I whispered to her in a real low. I ran my hand along her nose to the base of the horn, but I didn't touch it. Her ears flicked and I drew my hand back. She doesn't want you to touch that, a voice rumbled. Something brushed my leg. It was that cat, Timothy. The unicorn took a step back and nudged the cat's side with her nose. I didn't. Good, said Timothy. He rubbed up against my leg again. It's a thing of power, that horn. Not to be trifled with. He sat down and began cleaning his fur. She likes you, you know. Really? Pleased, I looked at Moon Pearl, who rubbed her muzzle against my arm. Can't see why, Timothy sniffled. You're just an ordinary boy. Not that ordinary, said the doctor, walking up with a bucket full of brushes. He's coped pretty well with all the strangeness we've thrown at him. She set the bucket down next to me. Here, let me show you how to groom a unicorn. I've done it twice now, so that makes me an expert, I guess. They didn't cover this in vet school, but she seemed to like it. The doctor pulled a couple of brushes out of the bucket and handed me one. I slipped my hand under the strap on the back just like she did. This is a curry comb. Use it like this on her neck and body. She started just below the unicorn's head, rubbing the comb in little circles. It loosens the dirt so we can wipe it off easily. Don't use it on her legs. I have something else for that. I stretched out my hand and I rubbed the comb lightly on Moon Pearl's white shoulder. She made a soft huffing sound. The doctor went around the unicorn's head and began working on the other side. Tell me if you see any sores or scratches on her skin, anything that looks unhealthy. I nodded and moved the comb along her sides. This is all I wanted, to be taking care of this beauty. She felt smooth and strong beneath the comb. That smell of earth and roses and pine rising from her skin. This will be one of your regular tasks, Eric, she said. After mucking out the stall and seeing that she has enough water and feed, you should groom her each day. Really? Thanks, ma'am. No need to be so formal. You can call me Chris. I wasn't sure about that. It didn't seem right. Grandma always insisted I mind my manners. Dr. Baranski noticed I wasn't too comfortable with her suggestion and said, or how about Dr. B? Dr. B, that's good. I was working my way to the back of the unicorn when I noticed her tail. It wasn't long and flowing like a horse tail or a girl's ponytail. It was more like a lion's tail, covered with fur, with a big tuft of long hair on the end. The tail was white, but the tuft was darker. I hadn't really paid attention to it before. I just thought her tail would be like a regular horse. Dr. B saw what I was looking at and gave a little laugh. It surprised me a bit too, but she's not really a horse. We'll use a different brush for the tail and comb on the tuft. Poor sort of creature that needs so much help cleaning herself, said Timothy. But then, we can't all be cats. He stuck his hind leg in the air and licked it, making a circle of himself. I laughed at the cat, and the cat glared at me. He was almost as bad as Allegra for giving me the stink eye. Dr. B taught me how to use a body brush and how to comb out the unicorn's mane and tail and tuft, and then wipe down her legs and face with a soft cloth. We changed the bandage on the hurt hoof, and I got to prepare the gauze and ointment this time. Next, Dr. B showed me where she kept the feed and where the new water spigot was. We hadn't needed running water when the barn was used as a garage. The unicorn seemed hungry, and I wish I'd remembered to bring her a carrot or an apple. It's about lunchtime for people, too. Would you like to join us? Asked Dr. B. Lunchtime? I didn't know it was that late. No, thank you, ma'am. I meant Dr. B. I'm expected home. I left the barn, but said over my shoulder, I'll be back tomorrow, right after school. I gotta go. I ran home for hoping Dad hadn't missed me yet. All right, guys, that's the end of Chapter 5. We'll be back soon with Chapter 6. Bye.